I just want to thank everyone for coming out. Welcome, Pleb 31. It's almost been 3 years. This is one we've been highly anticipated, waiting for since we first started. Um, Thank y'all for coming though. My name's G. I just wanted to open it up with some local businesses here, kind of just connect. It's the whole point of all this is just to get everybody connected. So Steve, if you want to come up and talk a little about what y'all do, who you are.
Hey, I'm Steve Smith. I'm my wife and I run a small ranch down in Devine, so south on the way to Laredo. We do pasture raised poultry. If you're eating the chicken, that's mine. We cook it. I also have some available for you guys. No pressure, but if you want some, I've got some available. And of course, we do take Bitcoin. Well, we like Lightning, but yeah. Anyway, like all of us do. Um, anyway, so my wife and I are actually both retired soldiers. And when we retired, we wanted to do something to continue serving the community. And so we, instead of the United States, we now serve our small community of Divine. We started a small farmers market down there, and we've gotten very active in a number of places where we can really contribute and help folks along their journey, to include Bitcoin in the education. And a lot of folks, it's just the exposure. I was able to actually orange pill my 83-year-old mother. She just started asking. Um, so anyway, I'm really excited to be here tonight. And if you like what you got there, the food, I again enjoy it. We do it to share. And if you have any questions about producers in the area, other producers, because the food system sucks. It's gotten kind of bad. We call it the grocery store now. Um, you like it. Dad jokes. Anyway, uh, if you have questions and you can tell me where you're living, and we might be able to connect you. Hopefully, we can probably connect you to a producer in your area. Like what we do, I do pasture-raised poultry again, and I process everything on farm. I can only do 10,000 birds a year, the state requirement, because I do process everything. I don't send it off to a USDA processor, so that limits me. So we don't need more. We don't look to do things like expand operations. We look to replicate operations. So there's ranchers and farmers and ranchers all over, and the best way to know you're about your food is to actually shake the hand that feeds you. If you don't know the person that's feeding you, then you don't really know the food. Again, it's pretty bad, and you can hide a lot of stuff in food. Um, so yeah, if you please ask me. I'd love to be a resource for you. I can do what I can to help you find a good producer in the area where you're at. We work with a couple of organizations locally, and I would encourage you, if you're interested in food, and if you're interested in freedom and ranching, there is a great organization called the Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance, and they're up towards Austin. They do a big event every year in August at Texas State, where they bring in farm and ranchers from all over, um, speakers, people in the space, large scale, small scale, all that. And we all are. It's kind of a little mini convention every year. Um, but we do that one. And again, we also have our nonprofit that we run our markets out of. I can also refer you into farmers markets in your area where you can, again, talk to that person, shake the hand that feeds you. And the only last thing I would say is, if as a recommendation, when you do meet the person, or if you're meeting a person, you're talking to a producer, ask them to come to their farm or ranch. And if they say no, turn around, walk away. If they say something like, "Well, I don't have insurance," just walk away. Say, "Thank you very much for your time," and leave them alone. Uh, our goal is to be, and most regenerative farm and ranching folks in our space, our goal is to be absolutely open, and let the air shine in. You want to come to our place, and I'll put a knife in your hand. You can process the chickens, and if you want to do it, it's nothing. Do it all the time. But you're gonna get dirty. There's poop everywhere. There's literally everywhere, and there's animals running all over that are random, but you can really see what's going on. So I highly encourage you, sir.
How far outside is NW?
We're down south on 35, about 30 minutes from here. 30, 40 minutes, depending. I wouldn't go during the day, normal traffic time. 35 is kind of a mess right now. For those of you who don't know, with Laredo, the Port of Laredo. Port of Laredo is the largest port in the United States, the highest volume. So we get a lot of trucks on 35, and it gets kind of sketchy sometimes. I actually I got hit just yesterday when my wife and I were driving on the road, so wasn't bad. We didn't die. So again, if you have any questions, again, my name is Steve Smith. I'm over there. I'm gonna put some cards back there, and I'm whatever I can do to help get you guys some get into good food and not having to go to HEB anymore. So wait a minute, one quick thing. Don't think that HEB is better than Walmart. They're both the same.
Yeah.
This one's shinier and cleaner. So all right.
Ooh, getting spicy already, man. And then I got one more guest speaker or one Dr. Muchigumba if you want to come up real quick. Again, it's all about connecting. Had Dr. Muchigumba as our speaker last month, so floor is yours again if you
Thank you.
want to do it.
Thank you. Actually, I just go by Dr. Roger because Mocha Gimba's kind of a tongue twister. So I have a clinic called Direct Med Clinic, and it's a direct primary care model. That means we don't take insurance because insurance premiums are really expensive and deductibles are high. So people don't have access to a doctor. In our model, people pay a low monthly fee and then they can come in and see a doctor as often as they want. We give them free medicine by mail order, and we give them an app that they can text us. They can reach us after hours. We'll talk to them, try to keep them out of the ER, emergency or urgent care. And what I really love about this community is this model that I work in is like decentralized healthcare. Okay. So just like Steve was talking about decentralized groceries and poultry, I love this community. I feel at home here talking about what I do. And because Bitcoin has the same kind of philosophy, it's decentralized. Um, so I'm super happy to be here. And my clinic now is set up to take Bitcoin. Very excited about that. Yeah. So I'm around if anybody wants to visit more about affordable access to a doctor. Yeah, just let me know. Okay. I'm really looking forward to hearing our speaker tonight. Yeah. Direct Med Clinic. That's right. We have a couple of locations here, one's by the airport, one's down on the south side.
Without further ado, what everyone's here for, Mr. Matthew Lysiak, can we give him a round of applause, please?
Guys, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. I met him at Bitcoin Austin, where I did a little thing, and I'm excited about this growing community in Austin and San Antonio and a few other places I've been to. I see some of my books out here amongst you guys. If you read the back cover and look at my little bio or have Googled me, you'll realize I've had a very odd trajectory. In fact, I used to be a really pretty fucking conventional journalist. Mainstream. Reported for 10 years for the New York Daily News, the fifth biggest paper of the country at the time. My job was as an investigative reporter. I would jump into breaking news scenes around the country, try to find motive, report it out. That was my life for almost a decade. I loved it. Went into become mainstream book publisher guy. Published with all the major publishing houses: Simon and Schuster, HarperCollins, Scholastic. Appearing on all the major TV shows: Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. I'm mainstream media guy. Everything's great. So how did I become the fucking weirdo spewing conspiracy theories? Right? Like, what happened to me? I don't what is this? One of the things that happened to me was COVID. I know I've interviewed former presidents and senators, so I'm used to corruption. That was my forte, exposing, in particular, government corruption, at times nonprofits and mass shootings, kind of separate. Um, so I've been exposed to corruption more so than most people, but when COVID happened, it did the proverbial jumping of the shark for me. Because while I was used to government officials lying, they lie all the fucking time about almost everything. They would almost always do it towards their best interest. So you could kind of like, they weren't really trying to hurt people. They were just sort of trying to navigate the world, retain power, fudge things a little bit. COVID was different. I mean, I think COVID was real. It happened. There was a virus, right? But the way it was weaponized by our authorities shifted me and kind of took me out of the mainstream. It exposed me to Bitcoin through Saifedean Ammous, who wrote the Bitcoin Standard. But it was a book he wrote called the Fiat Standard, which really changed me. In particular, a chapter he wrote, chapter 8, I believe, called Fiat Food. And look, I'm not an economist, I'm not a nutritionist, but I can understand that this guy was a next level thinker, Saifedean Ammous. And his theory on economics, he was positing things that I never heard before. They were counterculture, but kind of old school Austrian economics. But in this chapter, he posits this whacked out conspiracy that our entire food system has been degraded and compromised and hijacked to create what is essentially a 55-year gaslighting campaign. So I read this 7-page chapter and I'm like, this guy's brilliant, but what the fuck is this? Like, this makes no sense. This is backwards. And I begin fact checking. And when I begin going through just a few of his nuggets, and I began issuing FOIA requests, which for those who are into reporting is when Freedom of Information Acts, you begin petitioning the government for information. I have a bit of an obsessive personality. I begin kind of obsessed with this. And I realized that what Saif had posited in these chapters was like the tiniest fraction of a much broader conspiracy. I said it, going there. But truthfully, it's a conspiracy. It's a shift of incentives to completely alter our food supply that happened over the past 55 years. And I reached out to Saif and I wanted to write a book on this. And I understood that to do so I could not go to my agent with this. I can't go to Simon & Schuster. And I can't be like, I have this book I want to write. I knew none of them would go for it. So I reached out to Saif. Of course, Saif is Saif and he's cool. Started his own publishing house. I launched Fiat Food in October of last year. And we're at a moment right now, like, the Maha movement. Everybody's talking about it. Like, we have Kennedy, who's been appointed to serve as the HHS secretary. Feels great, right? But you Kelly Means on Tucker, Casey Means, they're doing the whole gambit for the medium. But to be honest, it's kind of pissing me off a bit because what they're doing is dealing with the symptoms of a much greater, more consequential issue than they're describing, which is, we got to remove corporate influence from food. And they're right. Okay, I'm assuming a lot of you have been keeping up on the news and know that this has become a timely topic. The corruption of our food supply. People are talking about it everywhere. What are they saying? They're saying Kennedy, who's brilliant. He's doing great work. Same with Callie and Casey Means. These people are doing really good work. But, dude, so their whole case is that our food supply has been corrupted because of corporate greed. The corporations are not the good guys in this. I'm not going to make that argument. But when you really do a deep dive, what you find out is that pre-1970, These same corporate incentives to make a profit existed. Yet the average American was eating 155 pounds of meat a year. You fast forward to 2010, that number's cut in half. What happened? Why? Consequentially, not unrelated, you look at people in 1970, go back and find a picture of people waiting in line at Star Wars, or go back and look at beach pictures from California. People looked very different. People were in shape. Metabolic destruction was not a thing like it is today. Not even close. What happened? I'm going to take you down a rabbit hole right now. What happened in 1970, particularly August 15th, I'm going to lower my voice. All right, are we good? August 15th, 1971, Richard Nixon gave a primetime speech, and he decoupled from the gold standard. So up until then, there was a bit of a restraint on the ability to print the American dollar, because while citizens were no longer able to trade in their promissory notes for gold, foreign countries could. So this put a powerful restraint on the ability to issue money. When Nixon came into office, he realized very soon that we had committed a bit of a fraud. We had issued way more promissory notes than we had gold in our treasury. So all it would have taken were a few foreign countries at the same time to redeem their notes for us to be exposed as a complete fraud. He decoupled. So after that, there was no longer any tie to gold. You could print as many dollars as you wanted. How does this impact food? I'll tell you. When you go through history, there's a very, very severe connection between political instability and rising costs of food. I will cite American University did a poll that showed in 2022, there were more than 15,000 food and energy related riots in Europe alone. That same year, you guys probably remember the news, Sri Lanka, food went up too much. The price of eggs and meat skyrocketed, and hundreds of thousands of Sri Lankans stormed the palace. The leaders had to escape on helicopters. That is what happens when people are hungry and when food prices rise too much. So I was able to access all these documents from the Nixon administration, and they were very concerned about this because when we decoupled from gold, what happened was they understood food prices were going to soar. To give you a little perspective at the same time, there was a book called The Population Bomb that came out, written by one of history's most influential morons, a guy named Paul Ehrlich, who posited a theory that we were all expanding in population to such an extent, we were going to eat ourselves out of existence because meat in particular was so resource intensive that we needed to all eliminate meat and eat grain. So this happens around 1970. Silent Spring came out previous to that, which also cast aspersions on the meat industry. Still, 1970, people ate meat. Also, I guys, stay with me. I know I bring it together. I know I'm going down a lot of avenues, but it's very complicated. So I wrote a book on it. There was a religious group called the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who began in the early 1900s by a woman named Ellen G. White, who got hit in the head with a rock and got brain damage, woke up and had a vision. God was telling her that almost every single malady known to man was caused by carnal desires, which were caused by red meat. Oh. Yes. So she had got a guy, you're going to love this part, named John Harvey Kellogg, tasked him to come up with a food, essentially an anti-masturbatorial drug, to replace meat for breakfast, because everybody ate meat for breakfast back then. He came up with Kellogg's cornflakes, which has been expanded quite a bit. He was succeeded by somebody named Leanna Cooper, who became head of the American Dietetic Association. You also, again, have corporate influence pre-1970. And it's definitely more profitable for corporations to give us mass-produced plant-based product because you can make it at scale. Higher profit, stable, I'll tell you. You should sell fucking Doritos, man. You'll make way more money. Raising meat is hard. Doing it the right way is exceptionally hard. So you have industry pre-1970 looking to make profits, trying to get us to eat non-foods, mass-produced plant-based stuff. You have the Seventh Adventist Day Church, which becomes an arm of the government through the ADA and Leanna Cooper from John Harvey Kellogg. But still, everybody's eating meat in 1970. When Nixon decoupled, and you could go back and look at this, it began this monumental swing of the incentive system. He appointed somebody named Earl Butz as head of the Department of Agriculture, tasked this man with printing tons of fiat dollars to distribute to corn, soy, and the sugar lobbies. Not to make us healthy, but to make sure our food supply stayed abundant. Then we began funding, through fiat dollars, bullshit nutrition science. So most of the studies that you're going to read that say meat causes X, they're from observational studies, which cannot establish causal relationship, only association. So for instance, if I took a poll of 40 people at goiters and found out that 97% of them dipped their toe into pickle relish, I could have a headline that reads, "Pickle relish causes goiters." And it would be true. Like, it'd be linked to goiters. And that's the headline. That is the nutrition science. So what I want you to understand is the nutrition science that you're reading, most likely is no different than public relations. It's PR. It's bullshit. The clinical studies, the real clinical gold standard research done on nutrition, it's very rare. There hasn't been a lot of it done. And it comes to very, very different conclusions than what you're all reading. And what's happened is, from 1971, when the government began funding nutrition science, coming up with dietary guidelines, I don't know how I'm probably one of the oldest people in this room, but I can tell you as a teenager in 1992, when they came up with the food pyramid, I was told it was healthy to eat 8 to 11 servings of grains a day and eat meat sparingly with sugar. That was bullshit. It was a complete lie. It was done not by accident. It was done intentionally because the government was concerned, and I have a paper trail I reported in my book with 212 footnotes. They were concerned that we had enough food. And the reality is food right now is cheap. The mission is largely accomplished because I have 4 daughters. I could feed all my kids 4 boxes of cereal a day and they'll be full. But the nutrition we need to actually survive, the nutrition we need to thrive as a species, is becoming increasingly cost prohibitive. I don't know how much your ribeyes cost. Mine are like $25 a pop right now to get real ribeyes. And it's not just that, it's eggs, it's cheap because you can print Doritos like you print fiat dollars. You print them at scale and you can fill people up. But as you see now, meat is increasingly becoming a food of the upper classes. People just can't afford it. And it's a consequence not of greed from corporations. That existed pre-1970. Not of that whacked out Seventh-day Adventist religious group. They were there too. They had their followers, but people still ate meat. We shifted our incentives. And now, if you're a producer of corn and instead of raising cattle, you decided to raise corn, then you're into money. Or soy. Or sugar, because the government is incentivizing that to increase the food supply, to make sure we all feel like we have food. So I know a lot of us have been, excited about Kennedy and all this talk, but we're throwing snowballs at each other on Ferris wheels. We're missing the fucking point. The money has been degraded. It has been corrupted. And because of the need to obfuscate that corruption of our money and obfuscate the inflation as a result in our food system, and to prevent us from seeing that the food we've eaten and thrived off of for thousands of years as humans, we've just told you guys it is bad for us and to eat the mass processed grains. And that meat causes diabetes now. Swear to God, that's an actual study conducted by Tufts University, which is the leading health indicator. Tufts University, who are they? Well, I want to just kind of just give, because I know I'm throwing a lot at you, and I know it's complicated and sounds really whacked out. I'll just show you. I'll show you a picture here. I want to take you back to January of 2023. January 2nd, Tufts University releases their food compass. This is the highest, most prestigious group of nutritionists in the country. This is their life. This is all they fucking do is like go over nutrition. What is healthy for people? So what do they conclude? They conclude that Fruit Loops are healthier than eggs cooked in butter. That chocolate flavored soy milk is healthier than beef. They put 55 General Mills cereals on the to be eaten list. Tufts University is funded 11-1 by these same companies. Just throwing that out there. They're funded by Kellogg's. They're funded by, you can look it up. It's not a conspiracy. It's on their website. That same week, first week of January, 60 Minutes, renowned journalist Leslie Stahl interviews a doctor, very eloquent in her beautiful white coat, Dr. Fatima Stanford, leading nutritionist in the country. She explains that obesity, it's not willpower. It's not a lifestyle choice. It's actually a genetic brain disease. You have no control. I feel bad for you. It's no control. She happened to be a paid consultant for Wegovy, owned by Novo Nordisk, which also sponsored the show. The show is about Wegovy. It was a huge promotion of these weight loss drugs. There was one other expert they had on, also a paid consultant from Wegovy, Dr. Carolina Provi. These are detestable humans because what they're doing is they're trying to undermine your self-autonomy. If you're not in control of your own health, they can convince you that you're not in charge of the most basic part of humanity, your health. They can convince you of anything. Same month, January of 2023, the American Pediatrics Association, for the first time in 15 years, changes their guidelines. So suddenly, weight loss drugs are now referred to for 15-year-olds. First time in 15 years, they even altered what we should do about pediatric obesity. So I looked very hard to find the smoking gun, how they were all linked. I couldn't. There's no smoky room, couldn't find one. But I'd be a little bit naive to think it was all a coincidence, that these things all just sort of happened at the same time. No, you've been gaslit. We've been lied to. The food your great-great-grandparents ate, they were right. They ate meat. They ate meat a lot. When they couldn't find meat, they'd eat some other things. Sometimes berries are in season. You might have some berries in the Northeast, for a few months out of the year when they don't get mauled by bears or go rotten or shit like that. But they eat meat. And since 1970, we've been lied to by the nutrition scientists. We've been lied to by our governments, most importantly, who shifted the incentives. And the media's picked all this up because guess who funds them? Our Saturday morning cartoons as a kid were all funded by the cereal companies. Now our news shows are all funded by Ozempic and the pharmaceutical companies who come in at the end to clean up. Self-autonomy is presupposed by our physical health. And I think this isn't just a physical war that we're in for our own livelihoods. But I think there's something deeply spiritual about it. And I'm not a very religious man, but I see like this movement of people now finally being able to identify that something's gone horribly wrong here. I think we all know that. And this is why I know I get excitable, but I'm very passionate about this, because like once you see what they've done, you can never go into a grocery store the same way again. When you see what they're doing to us and to our children, like when you see what they've done to our public education system, where our kids now are going through 10 years of public education, which is run by the American Dietetic Association, which creates the guidelines that create what is by law served to our children, where our whole milk is replaced by strawberry sugar milk, and the seed oils have replaced the lard, and we wonder why kids can't pay attention. I mean, like, yeah, we're sort of pushing out of the matrix. That's what's really beautiful about this. I have people all the times are like going, how does Bitcoin come into this? Well, I'm not a Bitcoin guy. Like I am now. I own Bitcoin. I understand Bitcoin. But what I do understand is fiat and the rot that it caused. And when you buy Bitcoin, every time you buy Bitcoin, you take your fiat and you buy the Bitcoin, you take a jab at the Federal Reserve. You prevent it in part from being able to function appropriately, because we're altering the money. And when I don't want to be an end the Fed guy, but you need to fucking end the Fed, because when you end the Federal Reserve, and if we were to go back to a hard currency, whether that be gold, which over time always gets centralized and confiscated by the government, why I go with Bitcoin, because a lot harder to get my private keys. You end the need for the government to corrupt our food system, to obfuscate the degradation of our currency. And you let the natural order of reality restore itself. Because if there was no need to hide the inflationary theft of our productivity, then people will be free to make their own choices in what to eat. Because what you don't understand is our food system's been corrupted to such an extent that like our choices have been severely limited. So I've gone on for a while. I know I've gone a lot of places with this, but eat meat. Your great-great-grandparents were right. Buy Bitcoin. End of Fed. I'll take some questions if anybody has any.